Welcome to episode 168 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, we find out what teams and brands need to know entering China.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who doesn't speak this quickly. You're listening at 2x speed, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to Sports Geek. You might be doing it at 2x speed. I'd love to know. I do think I speak pretty quickly. I listen myself. I listen to podcasts at about 2x speed myself, just to crank through the amount of podcasts that I listen to. But it is funny when I then slow it down to normal speed. So thank you for listening, whether you're doing it at regular speed, 1.5 speed or 2 speed, or if you want me to sound drunk, just dial it back to half speed. You're either listening to Sports Geek on iTunes or Google Play. We're now on Google Play, or you might be doing it at the website, sportsgeekhq.com. And I have told you and asked you enough. If you haven't had a chance to leave a review, I'd really appreciate it. We're at 120 iTunes reviews worldwide, and they all help. They all help people find the podcast. Otherwise, you can contact me, Sean, at sportsgeekhq.com, which is what Max and Tom did. They are from Mailman. It is a sports digital technology agency in China. And I want to thank them because they set up this interview with Andrew Collins, who, funnily enough, comes from Melbourne. He's an Australian running an amazing business in China, helping brands and especially sports teams and leagues both understand, develop their strategy, and then implement that strategy into the Chinese market. So I hope you enjoy this chat with Andrew Collins from Mailman. Very happy to have Andrew Collins, founder of Mailman, all the way in China. Welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here, Sean, and just great to talk to another Australian in the sports and technology space.
Thank you. So first of all, tell us where in the world you are.
I'm in Shanghai. I'm actually sitting at my PA's desk because my one of the great things about working in China is Skype doesn't work every time you want it to. So it finally worked on my PA's computer, not my own.
All right. So that's very good. So first of all, I want you to, I guess, give a bit of background. How is an Australian in Shanghai running a sports agency and working with some of the big sports brands helping into China? Take us back to how they got started.
Good question. I don't talk about this too much these days. I used to talk about it all the time in the first 4 or 5 years here, but I've just hit 11 years in China. First experience was when I was 23. That was about 16 years ago. No, sorry, that was 14 years ago, where I first experienced mainland China and Singapore on a trip with about 50 entrepreneurs from all over the world. After that trip, which is about 2 weeks, I returned to Melbourne with a really nagging bug to take me back to China one day. It wasn't until about 2 years later that I decided I wanted to go to China, find a local company or another foreign-owned company to either acquire or partner with or whatever I could do to build a global media proposition. And that was my big ambition. And I was 25, 26 at the time. I did 5 trips to China over the course of about 18 months. On the third trip, I met a gentleman named Kirk who ran a company called Mailman, which was a outdoor media consulting business.
Yep.
One of the earlier media consulting businesses. Back then, there was about 50 million people online in China. You've got to remember this is 2006, the end of 2005, 2006. And we agreed over the course of a few night outs that it was best for him to get the hell out of China, and it was probably a good time for me to come into China. He had 3 kids and wanted to leave. He now has 4. And then we settled on a deal that would have me buy the company, and there I was at 27, 2007, sitting here in Shanghai at a different office than today, and I was running a very, very small business. There's about 5 staff, and we were consulting on media spend and distributing outdoor media through restaurants and bars in Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, and that's where it all started.
So how do you make the pivot from outdoor, to digital and then to sports?
So I've always had a passion in sports, and I've always loved technology. I'm not really a big tech head, but I read a lot, and I always stayed abreast of what was happening with US trends, and I always considered myself more of a global citizen. I never looked at Australia like it was going to be my platform for what I really wanted to do in life. So when I got to China, I just continued to read up on technology, and then sports was a real passion. Part of it was serendipitous. It wasn't so I arrived in 2007. By 2009, I was winding down that outdoor media business, and the explosion of digital just started to take shape. Had a conversation with Liverpool Football Club about getting them across Chinese digital space, including Renren back there, which no longer exists, will no longer exist in the shape that it was, and Weibo, which still exists today. And it was off the back of their football tour. I believe it was 2011, and we were talking in 2010. They were the first client that I'd discussed about launching a digital strategy for them in China. And it was also them, and it was AFL Football Club where I helped. We as a company, we helped the first ever AFL experience, which was Melbourne versus Brisbane in Shanghai in October 2010. So we actually launched an AFL website called 51afl.com, which was another way of saying "Wo Yao AFL, I want AFL."
Yep.
And that was our first two sports properties we did all the marketing for in China, and then started there.
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing. Very much, spoken to a lot of the teams in the EPL and out of Europe, and they've reached saturation point in that market. And rather than push heavily into the US, which they are doing now, they were some of the first teams to be really looking at the Asian market and China specifically to do it. And it started with the tours, but then the next piece is, well, how do we stay connected in the market? So how does a team, from Europe then say, well, how do we connect with the Chinese market in a digital sense? Because they're completely different platforms, obviously different languages and things like that. But how does it differ?
I think I think almost everything about it is different. Even the messaging and the way core brand messages of a club or an athlete or a league, which we work across, is interpreted in the market. I'd say fundamentally the biggest challenge any club, big or small or property, I mean, we work across NFL, UFC, NHL, and then a lot of football, including the Bundesliga, a lot of Premier League clubs, Italian clubs, and a lot of athletes. I think the most important thing for anyone entering this market is to understand what is going to be your role in China and how does that support China's mission. So how does it support development of participation? How does it support education of sport? How does it engage your core fans or your core audience? And most properties, definitely at the top end, have at least an audience. But importantly, how does your agenda support China's agenda? And if you can get that right, the earlier you get that right, the easier it is to formalize a strategy and get the support locally, whether that be through government, media, sponsors, partners, or whoever it may be.
So has that been, I guess, where other teams or other players coming into the market have got it wrong, just seeing China as a big market, like just seeing the billions of people and going, oh, well, if we put out the same stuff, it'll hit the mark, we'll broadcast into the space, we'll do the napkin math, and if we get 1% of all these people, that's a lot of people, that just doesn't work? Yeah,
I think, you need a long-term approach. B, you need to tap local insights or local patriotism and create a narrative or a story that people can really gravitate to. I think the UFC has done a great job. We've been working with them since day one through digital, and did the activation in terms of media engagement and digital for the Macau event. I think that was in 2013 or 14. And they've really developed for what we believe in here anyway as being one of the most engaged fan communities of any sport in China. And that is very much a challenger sport in mainstream media here.
Yep.
And a lot of that is off the back of local stories been developed. So trying to uncover China's next MMA stars. Li Jingliang has been a great ambassador for UFC and for China. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now. He's due to fight the 25th of November this month. But the UFC particularly have taken a long-term approach, really built that audience, built that engagement, and they are now almost on par with Manchester United in terms of followers on WeChat. And WeChat is predominantly a very peer-to-peer channel, much smaller numbers than Weibo, but their numbers are almost on par with Manchester United. The UFC fan community on WeChat is bigger than Liverpool, it's bigger than Chelsea, it's bigger than the rest of the Premier League, just to give you a sense of the enormity of it. However, the reach of the Premier League is they're about 100 times more than mixed martial arts or UFC. So, but I think what they got right was they understood the role of mixed martial arts in China. They focused on organic stories, like local stories, and really tied that into a global story that could be told in China. And now it's all culminating in a landmark experience, later this year. And so, I think similar to NHL, which were recently out here for the NHL games, we supported them on their digital activation, like creating local stories again, but also tying in a strong message for the Winter Olympics and how that will, and how the NHL or playing ice hockey can lead to bigger opportunities in the Winter Olympics. So, each club or organisation has a different story to tell, and I think that's our challenge, just like many other consulting firms out there, is really trying to find a unique story and how that can be illuminated in China.
And are you seeing, are there trends that are happening, in the US and the European markets and the Australian markets that are the same in China, or is there particular parts that are exceptionally unique? Like we're seeing in the, globally that the trend of fans following the player first almost now, and the team second. It's probably very much so in the US, where teams fans will be Miami fans, and then LeBron will go back, and then they'll be Cleveland fans because they're following the player first, and that as a league is doing a really good job of promoting the players. Or do you see them identifying with a team and saying, well, I am going to be a Timberwolves fan because I've now seen the Timberwolves and I'm going to lock in with the Timberwolves, or is it a bit of a mix of both?
I'd say the hard truth would be it's all star-led.
Yep.
Much more so than other markets, particularly Australia, where Australia has so many big national teams, like the Socceroos, the Olyroos, the Wallabies, where people can align themselves with. In China, it's very much about the star, whether it be Neymar, Kobe Bryant, David Beckham, Cristiano Ronaldo, whoever it may be. Those athletes have so much more influence in this market over the teams that they populate. And
so then, what are teams when they're coming into the market? With that longer term strategy, what are they looking for? And both initially in that first initial phase, but then in that longer term phase.
Long term, I think it's all about. Well, it's a business, so it's all about a commercial model that works. And the biggest question is, how long does it take till it works?
Yep.
How much do you have to invest? And some clubs get lucky. I think Liverpool were good. They were very early in the market. They were the first Premier League team across social media in China. They were successful in selling their the Liverpool TV, the PPTV in China, for a good sum. And they've done multiple tours. The commerce worked well. On the flip side, there's other clubs like Napoli who are performing incredibly well in the Italian league. Great club, great people. That I believe they're about to announce a sponsor shortly. They've been investing in the market for the last couple of years. Obviously, their budgets and what they can invest is much smaller than other big clubs, but the Chinese fans are really taking to them. But it's in just a much more niche audience.
Yep.
So I think every club, we just focus on football, every club wants a commercial sponsor, and that's the outcome of coming out of China. But they also want engaged fans that are likely to spend money on that club in some way, whether it be merchandise, activating when the club comes out on tour, or engaging their sponsors.
And is there different and new commercial models that are coming up in China? Like, I loved reading Mary Meeker's report and the fact that, in China, the idea of micropayments and paying by WePay and things like that, they're completely foreign to people outside of China. Is there a way that sports can leverage those channels to say, oh, here's some content and there's these micro payments involved that can then potentially aggregate up?
Yeah, good question. Like, I think in the next 2 years, every major football club around the world should be offering WeChat Pay on their domestic commerce store. That's just a no-brainer. And they can reach out to us if they want support with that. But that is a absolute no-brainer. That also allows cross-border transactions. So you can run and manage a WeChat account in China without the legal requirement of setting up, let's say, a WeChat store or a Tmall store, but you can promote and engage that global store and then at least take transactions from China where people are most comfortable to pay. You cannot underestimate the power of WeChat and its ability to break down every inconvenience or hindrance to being able to sell something.
Yep.
It's just one click buy. It acts as your wallet. Your book. You can book a taxi with it. You can buy movie tickets with it. You can exchange money with each other, and of course you can buy merchandise on commerce stores. So WeChat is aggressively moving around the world and opening up a lot more WeChat payment options for a whole bunch of different clubs, but also even offline retail. They're doing it. I think in some other parts of Asia and even in the US, you will find WeChat Pay offered, I think, at Uniqlo or H&M.
Yep. And
you will start to see that in Australia as well and the UK.
And I just think, again, coming from a different culture where we've had the West and we've seen the New York Times have some success with paywalls and subscriptions, but most people are saying, I don't want to pay and I don't want to pay for this content. Whereas you've got a whole different culture of, oh yes, I do pay, and this is how I pay because it's been easy, and that's how they've grown up. That's how their digital ecosystem has evolved. You're not facing those same barriers that you do, in the West to say, okay, it's $9.95 because it's got to be the same as Netflix or Hulu or that kind of thing. It's different, and so that's why you see, things like the NBA changing to say you can just buy this game because you just want to see, you just want to see the Warriors for this one game.
Yeah, I think people are a lot more prudent about where they spend money in China, and they don't like to waste money. So they're not going to pay a subscription if they think they're not going to watch every game.
Yep.
So yeah, mix and match is probably the most popular form of payment. But in saying that, there's companies like Tencent and PPTV who are now doing bulk basket-driven subscriptions who are doing quite well. So the market is shifting, spending behaviour is changing. We predict the pay for football content this year is going to explode, at least, let's say, 300-400%, maybe even more, because of the consolidation of football on just one or two platforms, online platforms. So, yeah, I think there's never been a better time to be in the content business. Another trend that we are seeing, like the digital sponsorship space, so putting values on digital posts and what is the value to your social channel, for example, or video channel in China? What is that worth to a sponsor? Being able to put a material value to that and then breaking that down as a sponsorship opportunity will be a trend that we'll see where a lot of corporate commercial heads will be looking at. And what else?
That's a common thing that's happening now, where it's part art, part science, to say what are we valuing this digital post, how much value is it to the sponsor? But especially when you've got, Western companies coming in and they're going with, wanting emails and transactions and not quite knowing how to interact in that market is the learning exercise for them.
Yeah, I think you've just got to come into this market thinking it's a completely different planet, and they speak a different language, they have a different ecosystem. It happens to be on planet Earth, but it could just as well be on Mars. And if you come in with that approach and you adapt to local policies and the local way of doing business, which can be really challenging for your early days in China, you can make real headway. But yeah, it does require a lot of patience and a little flexibility on the way you do your traditional business. But all the signs are really positive right now. It's fair to say that China will be one of the largest markets for commerce and pay for online content in the next 5 years.
So talk me through some of the logistics of a team or a league Whether it's the UFC pushing in for events or the Timberwolves coming in. What's the process like? What do the team need to have on their side? Do they need to have, Chinese speaking staff? Do they have to have people on the ground? Like, how much depth is there in, I guess, from a staffing resourcing point of view, to be able to say, let's get into the market?
I mean, I'll talk about a couple of examples. The NBA is a little unique because you've got the NBA, this mothership that drives most of the decisions in market on behalf of the league because it's a franchise model, and there's limitations to what a club like the Timberwolves can actually do in market. So I think the football space is a little more flexible. Each team can set up their own office.
Yep.
Some teams have their own representative office in China, in mainland China. Some have an office in Hong Kong. Some go to Singapore for a regional hub. To create real business in China, you do have to be here in the mainland China, whether it be Shanghai, Beijing, but also Shenzhen is a hot market right now. And then you've just got 100 other second and third tier cities that are going to be opening up opportunities. Most of the clubs are driven by commercial goals when they enter the market, so it's less about marketing and more about commercial people.
Yep.
It can be a very expensive exercise, so you will only see the top one or two clubs in any league or organisation look at opening a presence here. Maybe that will change. Companies like ours and others, try to facilitate that and ease that burden by taking on the commercial responsibilities or the partnership management needs of those clients. But then you've got leagues like the Bundesliga who are doing an awesome job in China and batting well above their space in the market, being the most engaged European football league across China's digital media.
Yep.
Because they tend to they have built a very strong local strategy in the market, whereas organisations like the Premier League have invested, but not at length and not at a lot of depth. So very few partnerships have been established with the Premier League through local digital media. And then you've got like La Liga's making some great strides this year. Each club or organisation has a different approach to building out their business in market. If you've got the cash and you've got the aptitude and you've got a long run rate, an ability to take the long-term view, it's always best to be in market and establish that footprint, whether that be a couple of commercial people, both local, maybe an international head, but a strong marketing support team that can engage all the partners that get stuff done in China.
And then how is that different for someone like Kobe Bryant that obviously has a lot of fans there and wants to figure out how to best engage them in that market? Yeah,
I mean, Kobe is an enigma for this market. He has the benefit of a 20-year career. Really coinciding with the rise of basketball in China, the exposure of NBA in China. So he really hit that sweet spot, but also a lot of the foundation that he stands for in terms of his, let's say, Mamba mentality is just great for Chinese youth and their ability to, focus and take on the stress and the pressure and get the most out of themselves. So, Kobe now entering his second stage of his life and building out, a new career in the creative space and content space.
Yep.
He is someone who will be doing some great things in China over the next few years. Outside that, you've got other athletes, let's say second tier athletes in the NBA. I think it's difficult for them. Especially when you're playing, the commitments are quite tough to commit too much time and energy to China. But there is other athletes, even Andre Iguodala from the Golden State Warriors. I sat down with him just a couple of weeks ago, and it was great to see even during his playing days now, how enthusiastic he is about building a sports and technology narrative and trying to find value for, former athletes in China and around the world and helping create a pathway for them. And then you've got, if you look at the hundreds of NBA stars, they've all got a footprint. They've all got, access to fans. But, to see that materialize in a business is difficult outside the top 10 stars because it is a bit of an icon market. You will see 90% of all endorsements above $500,000 a year go to, there are about 5 athletes, maybe 6, Curry, Kobe, Beckham, Messi, Ronaldo, and, maybe Neymar's going to take some as well now. So, it's difficult in this very star icon-driven market.
And I guess lastly, we've spoken a lot about the sports teams and leagues wanting to get into the market. What's the local Chinese sports scene and the event scene and local sports scene? Is it, and how does that? I mean, not compare from a skill level, but the consumption.
Yeah, it's changing. The consumer habits are changing. I think 5 years ago, very few people would be attending a CSL or CBA game. I don't know the exact data or the attendance, but it is rising. Yao Ming is doing a great job at the CBA as it begins to privatise and build in a lot of the professionalism that have been the hallmark of the NBA. And I'm sure through Yao's experience at the NBA is having a great advantage to the development of the CBA. I must disclose that Yao is also an investor in our company. So he is, I think, himself taking a great lead at developing something that he loves and wants to see develop in China. The CSL is also developing. The local derby is fantastic in Shanghai, and the success of Guangzhou Evergrande in the Asian Champions League has been great as well. So, but it's just different spending habits.
Yep.
That, unlike Melbourne, where you are, Sean, where sport is just part of culture and going to the football on the weekend is no big deal. Here it is. It's still, it's a changing family structure and changing family spending habits and where you spend that money. But fortunately, they've got so many people here. It allows you to 1 or 2% difference in spending habits can have a big impact on your bottom line.
But you are seeing, I guess, what's the thing that's attractive about China is you're seeing that growth of sport consumption because it's so much easier to connect. It's so much easier to be watching NBA games, EPL games, NFL games, keep following the UFC because all of these products are available in a digital form. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all available. I mean, even at my house, I turn on PPTV and I can watch live NFL. It's either on Tencent or PPTV on my platforms. I can watch live NFL, UFC, the Bundesliga, the Premier League. The only thing I can't watch, which I love, is AFL football in China, which would be great. So if they're listening, they should give away their TV rights.
You can't get watch AFL.
I can't. I can get onto the Watch AFL app, but it breaks up quite a lot in China.
Oh well, we'll have to. I'll
stream
catch up with the AFL and get them onto that.
Good, get them on it.
Definitely. Last thing I want to ask you about, I guess, is the other thing and again I asked you before, Kaiwo. Did I say that right? Thereabouts. Tell us a bit about that tool and sort of how it works for you guys.
Yeah, Kaiwo is a social media management platform. It allows us and a bunch of other properties to manage their entire content that gets published in China. It allows you to draw inspiration from your existing Facebook, Twitter, Instagram channels, repackage that, repurpose that, create new content, and publish directly to Weibo or WeChat. The platform then gives customers full access to what's been created, what time it went out, who did it, what are the stats on that content, how do you perform against your competitors, and there's a bunch of other features. So yeah, we use it. It's a little bit like the engine or the Boeing engine of a 747. So for us, it's the backbone of all the work that we do related to content and where that content goes.
And it gives, I guess, clients, the teams knowing, well, we don't know enough about these platforms. We can't really just give an intern one of these platforms to post because they don't know the language. It goes through that as a system to be able to manage that.
Yeah, it's got a nice sort of management flow that allows you to seek approvals on content before it gets published. You can reach out to our team or other agencies that wish to use it. But yeah, it's just a management platform that gives you a lot more certainty about what is actually happening in this very foreign market.
And the last one I want to, I guess, ask, what do you think the biggest lessons that these teams, as they enter the market, what's the biggest lessons they've learned from entering the market?
Well, good question. Different teams, different lessons. I would say the earlier you engage China, the better. I think that's a great lesson that UFC are benefiting from when they're almost about to sell out of their November event. NHL have done a great job coming in a little earlier this year before their NHL games. They've had huge growth actually on their social since the local games went on in Shanghai and Beijing. But the earlier you get in the market, the better, and take a long-term approach. And I think if you do that, you not only create a better working relationship with the people you work with, you have better dialogue with local partners in China.
Yeah, definitely. It was pretty much a setup there. You could have used the Chinese proverb, when's the best time to plant a tree? The best time is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
That's exactly right.
You can use that one when someone says, when should you enter the Chinese market?
I like that.
I want to finish with the closing five, which is just five questions to let you know. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Oh, great question. I think it was the Australian Open with my grandmother.
Australian Open, would it have been at Flinders Park, at Rod Laver, or back at Kooyong?
No, Melbourne Park. I would have been 12 years of age. We would have driven the 3.5-hour journey from Wodonga. Yep. We would have stopped at Euroa on the way. We probably would have had a steak sandwich and maybe a Big M, and then we made our way to Melbourne.
I would have stopped, maybe got a vanilla slice or something like that.
Yes.
Yep. And speaking of food, and people now are probably Googling what vanilla slice is, and you should. They're delicious. Sure. What's your favourite food at a sports event?
4 and 20 meat pie, AFL footy.
Yeah, exactly. What's the first app you open in your phone in the morning?
Inkl, INKL.com. I just recently downloaded it. In China, it's difficult to get all the news. Yeah. They don't all come through easily. So Inkl aggregates all the
news aggregator.
It's an aggregator. Yeah, it's a news aggregator. Okay. I use it particularly in China.
All right, Inkl, INKL.
Yeah, it gives me access to New York Times, Washington Post, The Age, and a bunch of other media. Gives me a taste of what's happening in the world.
Cool. And if you were to nominate someone that you think the Sports Geek listeners should follow, whether it's someone you listen to or read or follow, or it's just a really good person, who would you nominate?
Kobe Bryant. No one is more passionate, more committed, and more driven to achieve his personal and stick to his personal values and goals.
Yep, and it is very much a watch this space with Kobe in the content movie business that he's building out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's Dear Basketball. We're working on the release of that with him here in China. That gets released, I believe, 18th or 19th in the US.
Yep.
With Verizon off the back of the retirement of the jerseys, and it's an amazing 4-minute piece about Kobe's retirement poem. It's beautiful. I've seen it.
Terrific. And I'm actually interested in this one because I do ask everyone in a Kevin Durant style, you're the real MVP. I ask them to nominate one social media platform that they think is the MVP. Now, normally people are picking between Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. You might pick from those, but what would you say your MVP is? MVP, WeChat. WeChat?
Any day of the week.
Yep. It's just everywhere from where you are.
Yeah, and I think in saying that, it's not a traditional social network. So I think it's peer-to-peer first, a little bit like, so WeChat has replaced email in China. And that's why you see just hundreds of millions of people using WeChat because they don't really use email anymore in China, dealing with people in China. But the features and the ability to create a much stronger link with commerce and CRM and content, there's probably nothing better on the market.
So what is your suggestion to people either in Australia, in Europe, or the US who want to figure out things like WeChat? Is it the same advice I give people? Just start using the tool and try to figure it out yourself so you're getting familiar with it? Yeah,
WeChat to us is your addressable or let's say monetizable audience. Yep. So for example, United may have 9 or 10 million followers on Weibo and they've got, I'm not going to give you the exact number because it's confidential, but they've got well over 100,000 followers on WeChat, but the numbers are very different. But the numbers on WeChat are far more likely to spend. They're your fanatics.
Yep.
So WeChat is your platform for fanatics. If you are not yet ready to engage fanatics, meaning that you don't have enough of an audience for a fanatical audience, then don't start with WeChat. Start with Weibo, build an audience, and then move into WeChat.
It's really interesting because it's the opposite of a lot of the other platforms of go get the biggest audience. When you're just saying let's engage our digital cheer squad, if you will, because they're the ones that are all in. And it's a bit contrary to other platforms that have been, what's our like count? How many followers do we have?
Yeah, very different. Like make noise on Weibo.
Yep.
Build a relationship on WeChat with your most committed fans.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Hopefully we will be able to catch up when you're next in Melbourne, or maybe I might be headed to China sometime. Where can people find you on the internet if people wanted to connect with you?
Well, occasionally when I get on Twitter, it's AC Mailman. Otherwise, they can email me, andrew@mailmangroup.com. Happy to chat.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and hopefully we can catch up soon.
Shawnee boy, it's been great to talk to you.
Want to chat with Sean? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. You're listening to Sports Geek. Send us a tweet at SportsGeek.
Thanks again to Andrew Collins, AC Mailman on Twitter when he does tweet, but I do think he's a worthwhile follow on Medium if you follow Medium. And what we did find out just in the off mic, when we stopped the recording, is that we did have a common friend, and it just shows you how small the world is now thanks to the internet. That common friend is Steve Sammartino. You might remember him. Had him on the podcast a while ago now. He was the guy behind the giant Lego car that ran on air, that did a couple of laps of the internet when it was launched. If you haven't seen the Lego car, simply type Lego car into Google and hit the first YouTube video you see. Steve was the guy behind that, and both Andrew and I know Steve. So Steve, Samo, if you know, shout out from me, and thanks for projects like Lego and connecting us with guys like Andrew. So the question for the podcast from mine, and sort of my takeaways from talking to Andrew is, what is your strategy for China? As we sort of discussed, you can't just see a large population and think you can broadcast to it. It's very much about developing that community, and also giving value back to the Chinese market. Especially, listening to what the UFC are doing in both developing MMA fighters in China as part of their narrative and part of their storytelling in the market. I think it's really important. It can't just be, we've got a great logo, we're going to put it out there in the market. It's got to be a little bit deeper. And there is investment involved, but there is a big upside. There's a lot of potential in the market. So I'd love to hear more about what you're trying to do and what you're potentially trying to do, and reach out to Andrew if you are looking to get into the market. Just a few things to wrap up. I've had a really good, terrific response to the Facebook data guide that we developed around developing audiences for web and data and video and page audiences. There's a few people that have both messaged me or called me and said, I did not realise I could do that, or I did not realise those audiences existed, and it's sort of like finding a bit of finding money at the back of the couch, finding out that you've got these fan groups here ready and willing to potentially buy tickets or further engage. So please, you can go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB data to download that. We've had a lot of downloads and a lot of feedback, and we're very much at the moment in pitch deck and rate card building mode with Sports Geek campaigns. So again, if you need help with your rate card, as we discussed there with Andrew, it is a global problem that is being solved currently. Like I said, it's part art, part science. But having to understand, what are these social posts worth? What are these digital posts worth? What's this content worth? Is really important. You need to start drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is what it's worth for us. And then it gives me the ability to look at your digital playbook and punch it up a little bit and bring in some more digital revenue. So that's pretty much what Sports Geek Campaigns is. I did a recent LinkedIn post. If you go to my LinkedIn, Sean Callanan, and check out the latest articles, I sort of go through why we've partnered with Tradable Bits. They're very much like-minded geeks like myself. We're very much driven to see better campaigns. We're sick of seeing bad campaigns out in market, and we think we can offer teams the ability to execute those campaigns without the drain of extra resources. So if you're looking to drive more revenue, we're happy to talk to your digital team, your data team that want that data but more importantly, your commercial teams, help them sell those deals. You can go to sportsgeekcampaigns.com to book in a time, but as always, as a podcast listener, you know that you can call me by using the link, sending me an email, sending me a DM, hitting me up on LinkedIn. I'm very available on all of those channels, or you can hit me up in the SportsBiz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack and send me a message there. So until next week, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join over 1,000 sports business executives in SportsBiz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. Please leave an iTunes review for Sports Geek. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Find out how to drive between $8,000 and $30,000 in profit for each digital campaign you sell sponsors. Check out sportsgeekcampaigns.com. Just like Jimmy Butler, you can call Sean anytime at 614-407-0407-200.